millions watched Wesley Huff, who was billed as the number one Christianity expert. And here Stephen Bartlett asks him a question that I guess every honest person eventually asks. He says, like, where am I going when I die? He's already told Huff that he's not convinced about the God proposition. And listen to Huff's answer.
Am I going to hell?
Yes.
What's interesting is Scrivener, I'm going to splice in a few of his comments on this and why I disagree.
What we're about to see from Wes Huff is a great example of what it looks like to reframe a question and to represent the gospel through it.
If I sin in my life, do I go to hell?
You don't... I mean, the answer to that is yes and no, but
Am I going to hell?
Are you going to hell? Stephen Bartlett. Is Stephen Bartlett going to hell? This is the clip that they're going to put online, right? Wes says Stephen Bartlett is going to hell. I mean, here's the thing. Everybody is going to hell. Everybody.
So in the very same breath, Huff admits that the fire, the actual flames, the burning, is probably allegorical.
I mean, there's a lot of imagery of like fire and weeping and gnashing of teeth. I think a lot of that is kind of reflective and allegorical more than it's like a physical, tangible thing that is, most of our perceptions of hell are largely shaped by depictions in the Middle Ages of Dante's Inferno and that kind of thing, right? I think it's more so that you will experience the full weight of the separation from God's goodness. Not necessarily a separation from God, because I think God's punishment and his wrath are going to be felt there. But if we're talking about like a good place, bad place, in the very simplest of terms, yes.
Now, you can't go to a metaphorical place. In my understanding, is illogical. So, is it what he said that everybody goes to hell, or is hell just a metaphor? I'm not sure how you can have both. And for me, the more important question is, does the Bible actually teach that if you're not convinced that going to hell is a worthy offense, whatever hell means now, because Wes Huff seems to have his own interpretation about that. He's a New Testament scholar, and I understand that if you look over the Old Testament to the New Testament, you're going to get different ideas about what hell is. But the word most often translated hell in the English Bible from the Greek comes from this word Gehenna, which was a real place, the valley of Hinnom, just outside the walls of Jerusalem. And this was like a rubbish heap, which burned all day. The fire never went out. People would throw rubbish on the embers and they'd start again, and then people would come. And obviously it had a smell. There was a lot of heat there. People could probably picture the smell. There you could see the worms and the maggots on the outskirts of Gehenna, where the rubbish was, as it was eating the refuge that wasn't as hot. And nothing like a Middle Earth place of torment. Now, I would argue that Huff was pitching a soft underball to Bartlett. He is supposed to be an evangelical Protestant Christian, and they've historically held to the doctrine of eternal conscious torment. And that's really ongoing, unending suffering and punishment. It's not just separation, like he said. And Huff's positioning is definitely not mainstream. In fact, I think it's like soft apologetics.
Now, the Bible is very clear. There is an under the earth, and it is the pit, and it is a place of outer darkness where there is weeping and wailing and the angry gnashing of teeth. Hell is for those who reject that love story. So that's the first way that Wes reframes things.
Now, the question is whether the default position for the dead is hell. That's something else that he raised. He says, like, if you're not going to heaven, you're going to hell. Now, he's not an Old Testament scholar, but the Hebrew word for Sheol, or hell, which is Sheol, basically means the realm of the dead or the place of the dead. It's not a place of punishment. It's simply where everybody goes, whether you're righteous, whether you're wicked. In fact, this whole idea of hell was shaped. The very early Jewish tradition where the dead know nothing. It was in a state of unconsciousness. And I can make a video about that if you like, just comment below. But even in Wes Huff's interview, he admits that the fiery hell of the popular imagination is shaped by things like Dante's Inferno, less by scripture. Now, Bartlett says that he's not convinced. He grew up a Christian, he drifted towards new atheism at around 18, and he's still asking questions. But this isn't good enough, according to Huff, and it probably isn't good enough according to most Christians. But my question here, I guess, is just to think about, is intellectual uncertainty, not being convinced, not holding a belief, the same as rejecting a belief? Now, if you think of logical situation, I'm going to propose that you believe that we are invaded by pink flying unicorns. Even if you don't believe in the invasion, at least believe that there are pink flying unicorns out there that are about to invade us. Don't just imagine it. We can all imagine it. You need to actually believe it. And obviously you can't do that because evidence and experience probably tells you that you've never seen pink flying unicorns, and this impending invasion is probably very unlikely. So if belief is actually a response to evidence, you can't simply just decide to be convinced, more than you can decide that a joke is funny. So I'm not convinced. Is that deserving of eternal punishment or hell, whatever hell might be, because that's something else as well. So punishing someone for the state of their cognition, for what the evidence has or hasn't produced in them, I don't think that's very just. It's punishment for having a certain kind of thinking. Now, I know Huff is trying to sidestep the theological idea of eternal punishment, and I think it's somewhat dishonest. But what I find interesting, and again, as I say, maybe there's an entire video that can be done with this, so please like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know if you'd like to do it, because the Bible contains 3 distinct afterlife traditions. The first is this eternal conscious torment, which is what the traditional evangelical view is. The second is annihilationism, and the third is universalism. They're very interesting. In fact, it's come up in Christian circles in a debate quite recently, and maybe this is what has got Huff thinking, because I don't believe this has always been his view. But in the same interview, he's asked about whether religion's an accident at birth, and of course the statistical overwhelming evidence is yes. The vast majority of people are born into a culture and the religion of their birth. So you have to ask if the eternal destiny of a person depends on the accepting a specific proposition about a specific historical figure or a specific God, and the exposure to that specific proposition depends on the geography, then the system is not just.
Am I going to hell or heaven as it relates to the scriptures?
Well, I don't think if you're living your life rejecting God, God is not going to force you into his presence.
So I'm not going to go into heaven. I'm not going to go to heaven then.
No.
Where am I going to go?
Well, you would go to hell.
So if I don't believe in the Bible, Jesus and God, then I'm going to go to hell.
Yes, insofar as if heaven is a place for those who have submitted their lives to Jesus, who are living the identity of what they're created to be, and said, your will be done, God.
Yeah.
Hell is a place where God says, you rejected me, your will be done. I'm going to give you what you want. In that, I'm going to remove my grace and mercy from you, and you are going to experience truly what you desire in being separated from me and my goodness and my grace.
So, Huff here, he frames hell as God honoring the person's choice. He didn't want to be with God, and God respects that. All will be done. It sounds respectful on the surface, but when you interrogate it for 30 seconds, I think the whole thing collapses. Because for a choice to be genuinely free, it obviously requires that you have all the information, or at least accurate information, and maybe genuine alternatives. And there's the absence of duress or conversion, because if somebody puts a gun to your head and says, look, your wallet or your life, whatever choice you make, you aren't really genuinely free to make it. If you hang on to your wallet and you're not convinced that he's actually going to kill you, and he does shoot, well, your will be done. If you hand over the wallet and you lose the contents, can he really say still the same thing, your will be done? So what Huff is proposing here is hell is the default position, and I think he's sidestepping by saying, okay, well, hell's not what you think it is, or what I've said it was before. If you can convince someone that failure to conform to a specific set of beliefs is punishable as an offense by default, you don't have any other choice, then to me it's just a compliance mechanism, a form of control. And in a sense, this is what I feel sometimes Christianity does. It says, don't lean on your own understanding, don't trust your heart, which isn't in the tradition of the Bereans or Thomas who doubted. Huff is saying essentially, if the evidence doesn't convince you, the default position is that you're going to be damned to hell. So you better really change your mind and make sure the evidence convinces you so that you can stand a chance of going to heaven, which is a gift. So in my view, hell's not a biblical idea, unless you think it's the place of the dead or the graveyard where everybody goes anyway. And I'll accept that if that's what Wes Huff means. But I think that there's definitely an opportunity to question some of the content here.